All right, it is raining. It's the 26th of November 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, a clothing company that is so much more than just a clothing company. We're out here in the rain, we meaning me and the camera. So we are called In The Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. We discuss the human body, the skeletal system of the human body, and we just talk about it as it is. We get our bodies back to natural. Our God designed our bodies only to work in a certain way. Everything connects in a certain way. Everything has a neutral position. The hips, the shoulders, the wrists, the ankles. Oh my gosh. And they just need to work the way that they do. So if we have clothing that potentially pulls our bodies out of alignment in any way at all, if it's not centered, if it's unnatural, if it has stretch to it, if our shoelaces are tied or laced in ways that our feet don't work, then our bodies get altered from their natural workings, and we address those things here at In The Image Clothing Company. So many of the things that you're going to doctors for, you or I in the past, any human to possibly have something physically going on with their body, a lot of times those doctors will not be able to fix those things. No possible way. There's nothing impossible with our God, but out of our earthly beings, there's no way those doctors could fix the things going on that are being caused by clothing if we don't address the clothing. So, yes, two prerequisites to allow the body to have a chance to operate natural, then we go and get into depth from there. Lacing your shoes with the technique that we use for In The Image Clothing Company. You find that where you find us anywhere online. There is our official domain, InTheImageClothingCompany.com. Anywhere you can find us, we have our shoelacing technique. You can find that just all it does is allow the shoe to be shaped like your foot. Included with that is tying your shoes evenly over toward the inside, and then removing tags from all of your clothing, even within the shoes. Tags, anywhere they're placed, will cause an unnatural gap within the clothing that's going to alter your body. A tag within the rear of the shirt is going to alter your shoulders. A tag within the rear of the pants is going to alter your pelvis position. And then anywhere they're placed, similar things are happening. Same with the shoelacing. Anything that's affecting the feet at all because of the laces of the shoes will just greatly affect the way that your feet work, being the foundation of this. Okay? So, yes, prerequisites. Yeah, it's, I love that it's raining because this video is supposed to be made right now. And it's weird because it's basically winter here in Utah and it's raining, and I'm out here just in a short sleeve shirt talking about the forearms. Now, just out of transparency, I made a video on the forearms and I deleted it. I was supposed to, because it wasn't quite how it needed to be, and we're gonna make it better now. So here's the thing. I've talked so often about the pinky finger and how that is the neutral wrist. The body has to be neutral. When I talk about neutral and natural, those are synonyms for the body, for the human body. When I use them at In The Image Clothing Company, when you ever hear In The Image Clothing Company using those two words or one of them, it means the same thing here, because neutral is the only way the body works. I discuss this all the time, meaning that's its foundational point, right? If you live life with your wrists constantly, well, okay, pinkies straight out, that's neutral. Look at my shoulders, look at the rotation straight out from my neutral wrists at the pinkies, okay? Think of a surfer. Here in the United States of America, we've got those islands of Hawaii. People out there surfing, they do this all the time. They call it a shaka, right? It's the hang loose, right? Straight out from the pinky. And I've mentioned the reason those people can do that, meaning the reason that why they do that as like a thing, is because their bodies are used to being mobile and open and neutral on a surfboard to balance, right? That's why it's a thing that they do. That really is. And a lot of people nowadays can't even do this without having their shoulders down here to compensate for their unnatural wrist position. Because watch this, if my neutral wrists go down, I can't keep my shoulders up, and you can hear my voice is like straining because it's pulling everything all strangely, unnaturally. So if you're living life with your wrists out of their neutral position rather than in their neutral position, right, from a foundation, from a pretty much always here, then from here we can go here and we can go here, okay? Neutral, pinkies, neutral, here. I'm gonna mention now, I'll mention it within this video for sure, just like I always do, I'll mention it right now. Clothing needs to sit where the pants are entirely above the hips, slightly higher in the front than the rear. The tops, the shoulder seams need to sit behind the little bone that's there that is your collarbone, and that just allows them to be neutral. Neutral shoulder, neutral wrist. And then the edge seams should be just right at the very edges of your shoulders. I've mentioned so often that the hand is essentially the shoulder, because it has to stem from somewhere. And so as I was showing, when I'm out here, neutral, and then I go down with, ow, that actually hurt. It's cold out here. But when I go out of my neutral position with my wrists, my shoulders will go as well, because it stems from there. So if your waistband of your pants is constantly down in the front, I've shown this before many times, but your wrists will always be constantly a little bit out of their neutral position like this, rather than pelvis going back to its neutral where it has been up until I just adjusted it to show. Now your wrists can stay neutral. The entire body has to work as a whole. The shoelacing and tying technique allows the foot to be in its natural position with a natural neutral ankle position, traveling up. Hips then can be in their neutral position as long as the pants are sitting just how the body works. And then from there, traveling from the hips up through the spine to the shoulders, as long as the tops are sitting as we discussed they need to, the shoulders can be in their neutral position, and from there the wrists can have a chance to just be neutral, straight out from the pinkies, okay? Now, if any of those things are not just allowing each of their things, the shirt slash just any tops allowing the shoulders, pants allowing the hips, shoe laces or heels doing a similar thing to what pant waistlines would do, because if you do put a heel under your shoe, your pelvis will compensate and your wrists will then follow, as I was saying, the pelvis will, what the pelvis does. So yes, and the shoulders, because the pelvis is connected through the spine to the shoulders, as I kind of laid out. So yes, if your shoelaces are doing anything unnatural to your feet, which almost guaranteed they are, if you haven't personally done relacing within your shoes, which it's not a thing like something that's big, it'll take you 5 minutes. Even if you've never done it, I can almost guarantee it will not take you more than 10 minutes. If you've never relaced shoes in your life, if you watch our shoelace technique video, just lace your shoes that way so that your feet don't get altered. But the way that shoes come, the lacing pattern is just affecting the arches in your feet that are naturally there, and your hands and your feet are so connected. There's only one difference in the amount of bones within the hands and the feet, 27 and 26. That's the amount of bones in one versus the other, and the operations are so similar, and I've shown that so often. I have a video that you can watch that kind of lays that out pretty well for the sake of relating to this. If you look up right under In the Image Clothing Company, titled The Feet, the Hands, and the Jaw, and I related those three and showed, similar to what I'm talking about here, about neutral wrists and feet and how that all relates, and the jaw has this natural function of stabilizing the entire body. And so yeah, those three things are very connected. So if anything within clothing at all, anything, It could be anything. It could be you tying your shoes unevenly, right? Tying your shoes like toward the same direction, either side. It's changing the rotations all the way up your body, all the way to your shoulders, and then going down to your hand. Now, just having collapsed arches, your wrists are out of their natural positions. Having the waistband sit in an unnatural position, doing the same. Having shoulder seams sitting unevenly because of things like the dreaded collar seam, which we have a video for in the Image Clothing Company titled The Dreaded Collar Seam. There's actually 3 of those up until this point. Each one gets more in depth on what it's doing. Within t-shirts, that little seam up on the top left, we call it the dreaded collar seam because it's really affecting the rotations of your shoulders. And it plays into the same patterning idea of tying your shoes unevenly toward the right side. So, any of those things, zippers in pants, zippers have to interlock, and so it plays into the same pattern as uneven shoe tying. There are right-handed and left-handed zippers actually, and that goes back to, as far as I know, maids would dress women in the past like traditionally, and so women's zippers would be left-handed because that way the person who's dressing them would be facing them and then they could use their right hand. But so that might change which side is on top for that case, but things like that that are altering any part of the body's rotations, as well as just front and back, right, anterior and posterior tucks of the pelvis, arches, shoulders, shoulder seams sitting anywhere that's not behind them will alter the wrists. If the shoulders come in front of the if the shoulder seams come in front of the shoulders, your wrists will go like this rather than back here, neutral, right? So all those things will affect the angle of your wrist. Now, we also discuss in the Image Clothing Company that we should try our best to not use unnaturally flat things. I'm going to stop with my hands right here. Look at my hands. There's this rounding. There's a radius within the hands. I've mentioned that so often. We have videos for in the Image Clothing Company titled Incorporating a Radius in Daily Life. And I discuss how we live in a modern man-made world and our bodies work how they work and they don't adapt to things that aren't natural. Within the world, everything has texture, everything has rounding, everything has the ability for our hands to grip, and we're using things that are so flat so commonly, and it's really affecting the pinky. And here's the thing, is the pinky finger affects the entire body. I have a video titled that for in the Image Clothing Company. If your arms are straight out from your pinkies, and then you're using things where with your pinky being the smallest, when it grips, it has to be able to come in with that natural rounding that's just there in the hand. Otherwise, the shoulders are very altered because the hand's natural working using something flat just can't be natural, so then the shoulder can't, because the hand stems from the shoulder, but the shoulder also stems from the hand. They're the same thing. So anything that's affecting your radius within your hand or your wrist position or rotations will affect your forearms, because the muscles within here, they just have to travel from here, really. I mean, they're traveling in a sense from all the way up here, but since you can bend here and still be doing the same operations in the hand, all the muscles that operate the fingers go clear up. And when you have anything affecting rotations, and then you're sitting with your forearms on something, on a surface, on the tops of your legs when you're sitting down, let's say you're sitting on the ground and you've got like your hands on your knees, like your forearms on your knees, I mean, If you have your forearms on things for many years, while you have your shoes tied toward one direction, where your whole rotations of your entire body are slightly like this, rather than having your shoes tied evenly, right? And you're here, if you have it slightly out on your whole body and you're resting your forearms on things, we're about the skeletal system because the body is about the skeletal system. All the massaging you do to try to work out the muscles within your forearms doesn't really do anything, because the muscles are just meant to work and operate the skeletal system. And so they would never get stiff unless the skeletal system's positionings and neutrality, right, was altered. So having those rotations be altered, when you do set your forearms on things, like year after year after year, what'll happen is the muscles will get adhered to the bones to try to like stabilize your skeletal system when it's out of its natural position because of something external. So that'll happen though, not only if your forearms are being rested on something, because just tying your shoes unevenly alone, and then let's say every item of clothing was just sitting correctly just to allow the body to work, which is very rare, but let's say that rotation, you'll be going through life and your forearms have to try to hold your shoulders in position, and especially the right side, because that would be being tied from your foundation, being your foot, into external rotation like this, right? And so you'd be going through life kind of like this always, and your forearm out here is having to try to like hold your shoulder up. And you've seen me, if you have seen any videos for In The Image Clothing Company, chances are you've probably seen me demonstrating like this kind of like position, trying to keep the body back into normal position just from the shoe tying alone unevenly. Now, like I'm saying, the muscle will adhere to the bone to try to just stabilize, because if it's not being allowed to just have its normal rotations, like these are only my forearms from here down, my shoulders are staying in the exact same position, and this is just my forearms rotating. And actually you can see, because, well, I can see right now, this side is having a harder time, which I love that that's actually being seen. This is just authentic. My feet haven't moved, as far as I'm aware, the entire time through this whole video. So they're both pointing forward, very, very slightly in, and I can't rotate this arm inward as far as internal rotation, which is exactly what we talk about with that right side of the body being tied into external rotation. But you can see it visually, hear it. I love it. I love it when things can come across in visual, so I can be the example of what I'm talking about. But external rotation is pretty well even on both of my personal arms, but I can't get, you can see there's like, it doesn't go more in than I'm showing, and I love that I can see it as well while I'm discussing it, because this hand's like pretty well flat. My shoulders are even height and position, and I can't get this hand in as far as this one. And ideally we should have our bodies even on both sides. So I mean, that's our goal. That's what we would be naturally, because that way with our center, the sternum, the spine, the nose, and staying vertical, right? We have to stay centered. There's no way we can go through life not centered without pain and stiffness, because gravity has to just do the only thing it does, and our bodies have two sides. So yeah, we really need to do all that we can within our situations to get even rotations. But I'm so glad that this, for the sake of the video, I mean, I'll work on it and I'll get my body as even as I can, but yeah, that's exactly what I talk about. Because what'll happen is, whether it is the dreaded collar seam, And really what it is that in combination with tying shoes unevenly and any other thing within clothing that could play into that patterning specifically, which is the patterning. It's almost always for all humans, because clothing designs are universal, because the human skeletal system has to stay even and clothing isn't in those designs, and because most all people on the earth are right-handed and tying their shoes unevenly toward the right, that's why it's a universal patterning. That's why these are universal truths. So that we talk about, right, at In The Image Clothing Company. We try our absolute best to keep our opinions out of things and just discuss universal truths that just are what they are and always will be. So this is one of them. And so having that like externally rotated more on this side, it's the right side of the body that I always say is getting so beaten up, if you will. And we need to be able to release the stuck muscle that's adhered against the forearms to allow it to rotate. Because there's what's really going on is there's two bones within your arm. You can feel this on your own body. You have like a bone coming here and a bone coming here. And that's what allows your arm to twist, because this can be entirely fixed right here and your forearm can twist. But if the muscles are just really stuck to the bone, then it can't rotate. Those two bones can't like picture this is one of the bones and this is the other one, but like this is one arm. They kind of like twist over each other like this. And if there's all the muscles that are between those two bones, if they're just like holding on so tightly, then there's going to be like limitations here, but then less here, right? Depending on which side it's being pulled into by whatever it is. And so, yeah, that's what's going on with the forearms. And it really is because of clothing. And I can address the things that we hold in our modern world that is so common, because people are in that position so often holding things nowadays. But those things always come and go, they always change. But as human beings, we're always going to be wearing clothing. And yeah, clothing designs have stayed the same for so long. And these modern things that we hold in our hands are always changing. But also, no matter what you were holding in your hand, we really wouldn't be holding the things that we're holding with being the shapes that they are so unnatural, because I've discussed our modern technology in videos, but we wouldn't even be holding that shape. We wouldn't be designing things to be shaped that way if we weren't within clothing that's just causing this patterning to begin with. Because I've discussed, if we're going to hold something naturally without our foundation being pulled out of alignment either way, without our shoulders being altered by clothing up top, or our pelvis's position by anything imbalanced in the center, changing the rotations, or the position, you know, posterior or anterior because of waistline angles, or pants just closing the hips off, changing the shoulders entirely. If those things weren't happening and the body wasn't restricted at all to begin with, when we held something, we would just hold it in front of us. And that's foreign to so many people, because if your foundation is out because of an external thing, being shoelaces, then it's never going to feel natural, never, within that, to hold something in front of you. You'd want to hold it to the side that's more external, because your shoulder is also. And so, stemming from here, this is going to feel more comfortable because it's what you're used to, because of clear down there for so many years, rather than, well, because the point is, look at my hips when I'm doing this. So anything you're holding with an imbalance in clothing, you're going to be here rather than just watch my hips if I held it in front of me. And my shoulder now can retract with the rotator cuff activated. So yeah, the forearms really need to be allowed to just, I love this visual actually, I wasn't planning on doing this, but yeah, they kind of do this, as in within the arm, those two bones roll over. Well, you can tell, and you can do this on your own body. So they need to just be able to be as mobile as they would naturally be. There's no need to try to stretch them other than releasing what's stuck because of patterning. But there's no need to ever try to stretch them or get excess mobility. They just need to be stemming from their neutral, and then from there they'll just have their rotations. Like this is just my shoulders don't need to be like that necessarily, but that's just my forearms. My shoulders are staying the same. That's only from my elbows out to my fingertips with the rotations. And so, yeah. As I say though, I speak out of example. That's why I was glad that we could both see. I can see it through the monitor screen here, but you can see that I can't get this in currently. It's not going to be like that. To whatever degree I can get it even, I'm going to work on just exactly what I'm saying here, breaking up all that scar tissue, because that's really what it becomes. And you can feel the difference on the edge. I can't speak for everybody, but you probably can. I can very confidently say most all people on the earth nowadays can notice this for themselves. If you feel the edge of your forearm, like the edge of the bone that would be like resting on something, if you were to rest your arms down on your left side and then your right side, if your right side is your dominant side, you probably can feel like gristly, bound up stuff on the surface of that bone. And if you try for yourself, keep your feet even, your hips even, and your shoulders even as best as you can within whatever patternings you are currently in from the things we talk about in the Image Clothing Company. But keep yourself as even as you can, hips, feet, shoulders, and try this for yourself, what I'm showing here, and you'll probably notice the same thing. A less internally rotated dominant arm, okay, for these reasons. So yeah, if we're stretching our hands, trying to fix our hands, first of all, the thumb stiffness and stuff going on with the thumbs all in here and everything, that's mostly because of the pinky. We're gonna do a whole video on that. I'm gonna do a whole video on that, so that'll come. But the point being, focus on the pinky fingers. I've talked about them so often. Focus on your pinkies, because if we're talking about the forearm, well, exactly straight out from the forearm is the pinky. So using things that are flat is going to alter the activation of the muscles traveling up, and so that will also cause them to adhere to the bone to try to really stabilize when the pinky is just not being allowed to be in its natural open palm rounded position. Holding something flat, it'll change the way that all the muscles traveling up will work. So yeah, anything that's just not allowed to be in the position it was designed to be in to work because of something external, it will just not be allowed to work normal and be compensating in some way. So it's we're gonna wrap this up before these rowdy boys come over. It's the 26th of November 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. We will have clothing available, always being made out of 100% natural materials, staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. We have In The Image Clothing Company podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. Check that out if you'd like to, where you find your podcasts. And we also now have a channel titled In The Image Clothing Company Music, where I just mess around with some music stuff. So check that out if you'd like to as well. But there is the forearms. Thank you.